You suggested to introduce a third keynote to the program, and that is a keynote to be presented by Brent Jones from Esri, United States. It is a presentation that he did give yesterday to the Director General's forum. I have information that it is a very good speech, Brent, and it is related to the professional agencies and challenges and actions to be taken. I think we all know Brent. He has a background in surveying and geodesy and responsibilities within Esri related to cadastre and land management, and of course in an ICT environment. Well, I have to say our president is flexible. I am flexible. Brent is flexible. I think we all are flexible because we are here. The coffee is not yet ready. So Brent, we are very happy that you want to give this keynote. The floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Crit. Yeah, this is a bit ad hoc. This is a presentation prepared for the Director General's Forum. A lot of what you'll see applies to urban and rural development looking forward, and I think the first two presentations showed what can be accomplished. I was asked to talk about robotics and artificial intelligence, and on the way here, I began to read this book. I didn't finish it. I was about halfway finished. How many people have read I, Robot by Isaac Asimov? A few? It was written in 1950, so I was thinking that, you know, when we try to look forward, it's nice to look back to see what looking forward was like 50 years ago. They got most of it wrong, and we'll probably get most of it wrong looking forward, but we have to keep trying. Because who thought that the world's largest media company would have no journalists, no receptionists, and no photographers? The world's largest hospitality company has no receptionists, no rooms, and no free breakfast. The world's largest database has no operating system, no infrastructure, and no database administrators. The world's largest currency has no vault, no bank tellers, and no drive-up window. Although they do have some ATMs now that you can actually deposit and withdraw on the Bitcoin. And the world's largest transportation company has no cars, no manufacturing, and no repair facilities. What's this mean for us if we look at the first, second, third, and fourth revolution? We are in the middle of the fourth, and I don't think we can predict that we're going to fit where this is going to end up. We're not through the fourth revolution. The enabling technologies of what is causing this disruption is what's really interesting. We're looking at transportation as a service. We're looking at hospitality as a service. We're looking at cadastre as a service. We're looking at mapping as a service. There are agencies around the world that have sold their registry systems to the private sector. There are agencies that are selling their cadastral systems and taking a fee for service. This is all enabled by the cloud, which really can mean somebody else's computer, and as a service just means that someone else is doing the work. As economies specialize, as economies grow, they specialize, and as a service will continue to grow. How does all this affect our work? We've all seen the Google cars. These are kind of cool. There's a lot of sensors on top of that car. They even know if your house has wireless or not. Okay, they didn't just take pictures. They didn't just do a little bit of LiDAR. They have all kinds of sensors in there. They know a lot about your house. This also moves into the private sector beyond Google, where a company out of the Netherlands, Cyclomedia, can map the front door of your house to 1 centimeter. It's pretty amazing technology. But the disruption, that was not the disruption. The disruption is occurring when a group of German car companies got together and bought one of these world data set companies with a street level data set. So as we look at autonomous driving, these German car companies can turn every car they own into a sensor. That's pretty disruptive. So what's this mean for us? Will robots take our jobs? That's a good question, right? Are we worried about this? Just go to willrobotstakemyjob.com and you can ask this question. And if you are an assessor or an appraiser of real estate, you're doomed. 90% of the functions of real estate assessors will be replaced by automation. So what does this mean for us? You know, you can look at some of the modern measurement tools. An electronic distance measurement tool, which we all used in our early years, didn't do much more than the rope. It was a bit more accurate. But what we're doing now with LiDAR and the new types of sensors and imagery is a disruptive and leapfrog technology, much more than just distance measurement. So how do we evolve? We've all probably seen this graphic before. We've evolved into surveyors, and now we've evolved into our desk chairs. But what happens next? When we look at the whole landscape of land administration of tenure, value, use, development, and ultimately the land market, we develop land data, we develop services on top of that data, and then applications on top of that. That's our traditional approach. But with artificial intelligence, there's a new paradigm of how we collect that data and how we provide information and services. So artificial intelligence tells us a lot of things, but the next level is machine learning, where we can actually train machines, train computers in what we're trying to think and what we're trying to do, which leads into deep learning, where machinery does a lot of our work for us. This is not on the horizon. This is happening now. This is the big shift that's taking place. You know, there's a lot of talk about autonomous cars, and it's going to happen in some form or another, but we've been working for 30 years to have autonomous driving trains, and they drive on tracks, and we have a hard time doing that. So what an autonomous driving car looks like in the future may not be you sitting there with your hands off the wheel. There may be other things happening. So as we envision this autonomous car that just does everything, it probably won't do everything, but it will do most things, but we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. And sentiment analysis, this is used all over the world for taking Twitter feeds, taking tweets, parsing the words out of them, and understanding how people feel in different parts of a city where a protest is going to erupt. It's pretty interesting stuff. And our area that we're probably most interested in is automatic feature extraction. I'm not going to go into these slides, the next two slides, but they're in here for your use. One is going to show you who's investing in technology in machine learning, and who's acquiring companies and spending money in machine learning. So with GIS, there are machine learning tools that we're using now. We can classify, we can cluster, and we can predict. What prediction is really letting you take the known to predict the unknown. I think we've all probably heard the first law of geography. The things that are near each other are more like each other, or more likely to be alike than things that are further away. And interestingly enough, there's no second law of geography. But we can use these traditional cartography tools of kriging and regression for understanding and how to predict. We can cluster, which we base on similar values in a location, in a small geography. Applying geospatial weighted regression to clustering actually allows valuations to take place with limited amounts of data. You'll see a lot of growth of this. And this is kind of one of my favorites, is classification, because we do this now. Almost everybody does this now, but this is actually growing really quickly, and this is where we apply the machine learning capabilities. So as you recognize the shape of a building, as you recognize how a road applies an imagery, processing can do that work automatically. It's not done inside GIS, though. It's done with some pretty powerful computing objects, the TensorFlow, and of course we all know Watson. These, we interface with these learning machines that deliver back to us. Now, we can detect these things from imagery, and we know that, we know this has been done in the, for those of you in the military or on the defense side of things, this has been done for targeting for many years. But with these low orbit satellites, that are about the size of a baseball, that are nearly disposable, we can do this and find parking places. So we can real-time scan the Earth and understand where there's available parking. And hopefully this video runs. Okay, good. This looks simple, all right? But this is automatically understanding where the road is and drawing the road center line. I remember when I was in school and I drew a line on a Tektronix graphics display, and I drew that line out of a database. I took the rest of the day off. It was quite an accomplishment. Drawing a line today in a computer is no feat at all. This kind of work looks like it's nothing very important. When this gets automated and in production, it will change the way we map planimetrically. This image doesn't look very exciting either, but this is actually using AI to detect what is a road and what is not a road. It looks like a simple image, but there's a lot of information behind this. Now, hopefully this one plays, because this is kind of an interesting one. So this is a camera in a traffic intersection. And in the lower left-hand corner, AI is deciding what those vehicles are. Are they cars? Are they buses? Are they people crossing the street? What exactly are they? And it's putting a level of confidence on what they are. That information is being aggregated and collected and displayed in dashboards. And if we had more time, I would play this all the way through, which would show how you understand traffic in an entire city, how you adjust traffic signals for an intelligent transportation system. The automated mapping with LiDAR, many of you may be doing this. This is pretty cool. This is automatic feature extraction from LiDAR, and not necessarily using core machine learning techniques, but using a series of logical processes to step LiDAR through to get planimetric mapping. And a lot of this value comes from combining these capabilities. We take street-level LiDAR, you add in the tax and assessment information, you add in some GIS information, some parcels, and then you can do some real intelligent valuation from your desktop. This is an area we see a lot of growth in. There is inequity in taxation across the world. And horizontal equity is that all properties that are alike are taxed and valued the same way. Vertical equity is that the lowest value properties are taxed at the same rate as the highest value properties. And this map shows that the vertical inequity in Belfast, Ireland is very high, meaning that the lower value properties are taxed at a higher rate. And we know there's no new appetite for tax, so we have to understand how to tax things at its highest value and uncover all the taxable property. And that's driving a lot of this business. And also using high resolution land cover. This is an interesting case study, 100,000 square miles, 2 terabytes of imagery, and it took 18 months to create a map of land use. Using AI, a GeoAI virtual machine, and processing this automatically, it came up with a 91% confidence level and was 16 times faster than the manual process. So, you know, if we go back to, will robots take my job? If I'm doing land classification, robots will take my job, and they may already have. Right inside the desktop, you can do these classifications as well. We're building in the CNTK convolutional neural networks into actually the desktop, so there's no external process going, and you can look at and test your your theorems. So what you do is you kind of identify an area, you say you think you know what it is, you test it out, you get a probability, and then you get a classification. This is kind of a neat looking animation, and what it's showing with deep learning is how long it's going to take to go to different areas in San Francisco in under 25 minutes at different times of the day. We've all had to wait for the electric power company or the phone company to come to our house to do some installation, and they'll say, be there between noon and 5 o'clock, when really you should just be there. They should be able to predict when they can get there a lot better. Now I'm going to change the conversation a little bit into some very practical things that we can do today. This project in polio was in 9 Norwegian states, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation wanted to eradicate polio. So that's a pretty big, tall order. Depending on the strain of polio, you have to vaccinate the same person 3 or 4 times, and you have to have 85% inoculation to eradicate. That means you have to get back to the same place 3 or 4 times, and you have to find the same person 3 or 4 times. And we went down to what's called a hamlet, which are 2 structures, 2 houses, 2 shacks put together. So that's pretty detailed, pretty on the ground. There were 20,000 healthcare workers. These were not GIS people, they were not technical people. So we had to configure some technology very, very simply. And the most disruptive thing here is, of course, this device here. So what we did was configure the phone so if it was moving, we took a position every 10 seconds. If they were stopped, we assumed they were working, okay? But we needed to know where to send them and how much serum, how much vaccination to take with them. So we took some satellite imagery and tested a few algorithms for calculating population density. So we could figure out the exact population of a given area, know where to send people, and know how much serum to take with them. Now here's the trick. They had to get back to where they were, but we had breadcrumbed the phone, so we had tracked their positions, all right? Pretty interesting. So we could get them back and back. We took that same data and processed it, and we ended up with the best base map in 9 states in Nigeria from exhaust, what we call exhaust data out of a cell phone, data that you're not using. That's pretty powerful. And the good news is polio has been eradicated in Nigeria, which is thanks to Bill Gates for sure. I got a call about a year ago from a guy who wanted to take cell phone data from around Walmarts. Not the actual conversation data, but the traffic. How much traffic is in each cell phone tower? And he wanted to use that information to predict Walmart revenues. So if the traffic was high, he would think that revenues would be higher than prediction. If traffic was lower, revenues would be lower than predicted. So he wanted to develop a model for that. From an investment standpoint, he wanted to buy if he thought revenues were going to be higher, and sell if they were going to be lower. So one thing that's happening with this massive amounts of data out there is it's being used in ways we haven't thought of. Not just the technology, but the data. Another area that's pretty new and is actually getting down to very practical limits is 3D cadastre. We've talked about it a lot. It's being used now for 3D tax maps, cantilevered lots, as you can see in the upper left, and valuing what you can see out your window. We've been doing valuation based on how much sun exposure and shade exposure for some time, but we're beginning now to actually quantify the value of a view. This is getting pretty exciting. And this is all automated, by the way. This is actually, there's not a lot of mouse clicks to put all this together. This technology is maturing at a rate that is increasing rapidly. Okay, so maybe some of you view this as some bad news, maybe some of you view this as good news. It's certainly going to change our jobs rapidly. With the automated mapping capabilities, what do we do? How do we stay relevant? Well, again, this was designed for the Director Generals, but I think it applies to pretty much everyone, so I came up with 7 rules. First is think big and think spatial. I was going to say think spatially, but Steve Jobs said think different, not think differently. So even though it's not quite exact English grammar, think big and think spatial. Use your technology to map and visualize, which you probably do now, and use it to manage your data properly. Are you supplying your data on where we do 85% of our work now? Are you supplying your data and applications on a mobile device? Are you using your technology to monitor the effectiveness and the status of work in your organization? Can you look at a dashboard and know the status of all your work and where your people are? Can you also look at a dashboard, or can you do analytics against your data, or are you just collecting and publishing data? I think the analytical component of technology is the most underutilized, and I think that's the biggest bang for your buck right now. Are you sharing your data for others to make decisions, for design and planning? And are you sharing it and collaborating it with others? Second rule is use your tools. This is, think of this like Microsoft Word. Everybody uses Microsoft Word. I probably use 7 commands or 8 commands, and there's a couple thousand commands in there. I do not use Microsoft Word to the degree I should. That's the same with spatial technology. Use it, learn what it's doing, because most of these things that I showed you are available. This is probably the most difficult for all of us, is to stay current. If we don't stay current, we're going to get behind very quickly, and that's where we get replaced. The taxi driver who got Ubered was not because they didn't drive you from point A to B. It's because they didn't come on time, you couldn't find them easily, the payment method was you had to get your credit card out, you had to do this, and they charged too much money. And the Uber effect was done because the taxi drivers were not staying current. What you see on the left are those same animations you saw, but on the right, that's full 3D cadastre done with 2D data. You have the information that you can extract and extrude and change and use your tools to create and use a 3D cadastre without having to go through the costly new mapping. Create new services, because if you don't, someone else will. If there's a demand, it will be filled. Okay, that's pretty simple. There's an old saying that people want holes, not drills. So provide them the data for those that want to build new applications, but also provide new services to answer simple questions. This one might be a bit controversial. Be free or affordable. These are the open data sites around the world that I could locate. There's one in Greenland. If Greenland can do it, we all can do it. Now, the reason you have to be free or affordable is because if you don't, someone else will. They'll create a shadow data set. It won't be authoritative, but it will get the job done for them. So you have to, this is not difficult. Every legal system, every country is different in how they approach this. But if you're not getting your data used, someone else will create data that will be used. You want to create a dependency on your data. So that's providing your data in a modern format, in modern services that can be consumed and used. And move quickly and evolve. This Darwin actually did not say this, but I do like it's attributed to him. But somebody said it about when they read Origin of the Species. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. And we need to figure out how to change more quickly, or we're going to get Ubered. We really don't want to be the woolly mammoth shown on the left. And the last message is get started now. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Brent, for this introduction that you were not aware of this morning. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the floor now for a few questions. I think we have one question over here. Is there a microphone? Microphone is under arrival. Keith Bell from the World Bank. Keith, please. Microphone, yeah.
Firstly, congratulations to all three speakers. Brent, I sort of know how you feel, man. You got a bit more notice, a bit less notice than me. I actually wanted to be provocative, but it's mainly directed at Brent. We've seen a lot going on in the world at the moment with many of those innovations that you introduced at the beginning of your presentation. You spoke about Facebook, blockchain, Uber, and Amazon. A lot's been said by about Amazon by Donald Trump, so I'm not going to say anything about that one, but there are issues. Facebook, hey, we just saw Cambridge Analytica and some of the really poor responses from the CEO of Facebook, the intrusion into personal lives. So I'm not sure that's such a great example anymore, but I'm being provocative deliberately. Blockchain, well, people have heard me talk about it. Blockchain is being exploited by oligarchs, money laundering, people trafficking, and all these other things because of the anonymous nature of distributed ledgers. It's certainly very useful for many areas, but it's considered to be a foundational technology, not a disruptive one. Uber's been crazy too, obviously not about the CEO, but in terms of the way it's put taxi drivers in many places out of business because Uber's jumped in, been able to get away around regulations, not covering people with insurance, underpaying drivers, etc., etc. So they're all great examples, but I'm wondering, I'm a baby boomer. My children are new millennials and Generation Zs. And I look on YouTube these days at about a lot of the new technologies, and I've been sharing some of the music. And you listen to the lyrics and read the words, and there's some really smart new millennials saying, hey, we've got some problems with these things that are hitting the world socially. I work in dangerous places, and I don't use social media because, I know what it's like now having a damaged shoulder from having information that gets out publicly about you from a particular situation I was in. So my point is that all those things are great, but unless they're fit for purpose and are properly directed and properly regulated, they can be very, very problematic, particularly when dealing in situations like Mr. Piker was talking about in trying to get things moving in a conflict country. 3,700 people were killed there last year. 10,500 people were blown up. Social media is being exploited by many of these extremist groups. So I'm trying to be deliberately provocative because we've been friends a long time. Cheers.
Well, you're exactly right, and I think that's indicative of a disruptive technology, that it's going to be used until it's harnessed. I think when you look back at the turn of the century with the automobile, it killed a lot of people before they got it figured out. And I think when you look at blockchain, and you look at the cloud, these are just growth areas. Blockchain is just someone else's database, distributed. The cloud is just someone else's computer. They're there because there was an opportunity, there was a seam that was exploited. And these being exploited for the for malcontent, for the bad side of things, that will continue until regulation keeps up, and that will always be the case because technology moves way faster than the legal system, and that's probably something we need to figure out. Like the GDPA that just, you know, May 24th or 25th, that's probably 5 years late, you know? So, but the, you may see, you know, I don't want to make a prediction, but the millennials, I have a couple millennials myself, and it's their time to step up and run the world. We're getting kind of tired of this. But you may see a backlash from the anonymity that they believe is not a problem now. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith, for your question. We have one more question over there, please. We all would be happy if you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I am Surveyor Eyo Oku, Surveyor General of Cross River State in Nigeria. I want to thank the speakers. Good presentation. Brent, the second time I'm saying that, and it makes me think differently every time I see it. But for Afghanistan, that is a revolution in your country. I was asking for the land bank. How are you guys doing it? It's a little bit expensive for government to begin to create land banks using the old system. Governments are struggling with money to do so many other things. But now talking about land bank, I've seen you have done quite a lot in a short while. I wanted you to give us some more, clarification on how you people went to got about doing it, especially in terms of funding from the government angle. And for Brent and everybody here, I think whether we like it or not, things are changing. The quicker we begin to see how useful we can be in the changes, the better it is going to be for us. The millennia and the old, how did the last speaker call it now? Some of us are in between these two ages. And whether we like it or not, there will always be the bad guys. Technology won't stop bad guys being around. So we need to start thinking of how the surveyors are going to key into what is going on. Thank you very much. Afghanistan, can you help us? My direct question is to Afghanistan. How are you doing with money in creating the land bank in your country?
Thank you very much. Well, as I mentioned before, we have... Okay. All right.
First, thank you all for your presentations. My question is related to the one who presented about Afghanistan. It is a grand policy of land reform, but Afghanistan is also facing tremendous challenges. Civil war by the Taliban, by the ISIS. Land reform needs peace and stability. How would you tackle these challenges in your grand policy of land reform? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, on the land bank, as I mentioned before, when you reform land administration system in a country, as we have done in Afghanistan, the first was to know what the problems are and what the constraints are. The idea of establishing land bank did not come out of the blue, but we have serious problem with keeping our land safe and using it on our land in a proper and efficient way. You know, Afghanistan is one of those countries we have a lot of state-owned land, but the systematic land registration has not happened. The problem was land grabbing. Land grabbing is a huge issue in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, most of the powerful people are involved, and some of them are still powerful, and they use it to their private, to their own benefits. Establishment of land bank, as mentioned before, was really fit for the purpose. Before we go to fight against them, as we have done, we have established a special court to actually sue them and talk to them and bring them before the justice. They're a good number. There are more than 15,000 people. But they all have been listed. The lands which have been grabbed, actually, we have the exact location and information and the names of the individuals who have been using it, and for how long and what is the value of the land. But in terms of the land bank, the financing of the land bank, at this stage, it's a donor-funded project from a Danish country. The purpose is to identify state land in different areas, especially with high returnees and IDPs, and use that for that purpose. But I think land bank itself, by nature, can be more than this. You know, we are in a process of establishing, which is completely at the concept node stage, land and investment company. It will be a state-owned company, hopefully. We have completed the concept. Once we know how much land we have, I think we can clearly use those lands in a commercial, efficient way. And as Afghanistan has this problem, I'm sure most of developing countries have, we're using very high value land for our own offices in the very center of the city. And we're using it only for services which do not maybe value for the land. So for that purpose, land bank will be really itself self-financing, not only self-financing, but will be a huge source of income for the government of Afghanistan, hopefully in the midterm. In terms of challenges, I think, I'm sure whatever is in the media is not really most of the time the reality in Afghanistan. I know we're always talking about the conflicts, we're talking about Taliban, but you don't see them physically in Afghanistan. I'm telling an example of my institution. We have directorate in 34 provinces, and I have a staff in 364 districts. So our total size of staff is 3,400. They're all reporting to us, and we don't physically see the international terrorism to actually manage things or to be a problem for the land administration. But definitely, we are at the front line for international terrorism, and you know the international support is there on the ground for us, and we are working to fight against them. But we cannot just sit to fight against them, but I think we have to also work on development projects and programs. And you know, most of the conflicts we have in Afghanistan is land-related, basically. Probably more than 65% of whole conflicts in Afghanistan are land-related. That's because the lands have not been registered. I'm sure the new program, which is an institutional and programmatic approach, IDPL, is not only ensuring security of tenure for land in Afghanistan, but it will be a peace builder. Land registration, in my experience, I've been working for as a public officer for the 5 years, is one of the best tools to ensure security and peace, not only from the social perspective. Enhancing the income for the people will definitely create incentive people to use their land efficiently. So I think we're working at the moment in Afghanistan, and the programs I've explained, they're all real. They have tangible outcomes. I talked about the cities, I talked about rural development, and definitely IDPL, and it's quite different from what we're hearing from the media. My suggestion is, as a person who worked for 10 years for government, that if you do good development projects, if you do touch and do contact people, basically you're helping peace building besides the development you will be doing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we have one final question. There is a microphone under arrival. Yes, please.
Öncelikle Türkiye'ye ve İstanbul'a hoş geldiniz. Tapu Müdürü Özdemir Kılıç. Efendim burada üçüncü sunucu Bay Robot adlı bir eseri okuduğunu ve bu eserin 1950 yılında yazıldığını söyledi. Bununla ilgili çarpıcı birkaç örnek verebilir misiniz? 1950 yılında yazılan Bay Robot adlı kitapta bugünü görmüş mü? Teşekkür ederim. Tekrar edeyim mi?
Yeah. Okay, there will be translation. Your question is addressed to Mr. Brent Jones. Yeah.
Teşekkür ederim. Tam anlayamadım. Ben soruyu tekrar edeyim o zaman. Konuşmacımız 1950 yılında Bay Robot adlı bir eseri okuduğunu söylemişti yanlış hatırlamıyorsam. Şimdi bu eserde günümüzü anlatabilmiş mi onu sordum. 1950 yılında yazılmış Bay Robot adlı bir eseri okuduğunu, bu eserde günümüzü yansıtabilmiş mi? Onu sordum. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you. The book I read, or not quite finished yet, is called I, Robot, written in 1950. And the question was, did it accurately predict the future? And the answer is no. It wasn't even close.
Thank you very much. Before I close the session, I think words of thanks will be spoken by our President, Professor Potiu. So please, Chrissy, ladies and gentlemen, please do not leave the room after this, because our FIG director will make some announcements at the end of the session that you don't want to miss.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the speakers for giving us the current approaches and challenges for managing the urban and rural areas in a more efficient way. Thank you for the Afghanistan description of the innovative policies and approaches there. And thank you, Brent, for giving us an overview of the potential of new technologies and how these technologies can help us in decision making, both in urban and rural areas. And I wish we could have some more time also to discuss the potential of new technologies and big data and geospatial intelligence in improving security all over the world. But this is another issue that we can deal with in another session. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Krit, for being here and moderating so efficiently. So this is for Michael Klaus. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chrissy. May I ask the FIG Director for announcements? Please, Louise.
Thank you very much. You will soon get out to your coffee, but before that, I just would like to remind you that we have a lot of interesting things going on the rest of the day. We have 14 technical sessions, and here too we also have 2 what we call inspirational short sessions where you get some really good glimpse of a lot of areas that's going on. Do not miss those. Then we have 6 different partner sessions. For instance, a session on STDM, and then there is a session on valuation for unregistered land. Here, a guidebook will be launched. This guidebook has been on its way since 2010, so this is really a remarkable time now. And there is also a session in cooperation with our partner FAO on securing tenure rights, and a young surveyors session. And you don't have to be a real young surveyors, we are all young surveyors by heart. And do not forget, now you got a glimpse this morning of what you can get in the Esri session later today. So that was an appetizer, so see what Esri has to say later today and learn more. Oh. For those who are going to the gala dinner tonight, please note that we are going with buses. So you have to be here at the entrance at the conference center, the latest at 7 o'clock. We're going to drive with buses and they are going to be on time. At last, I would like again to remind you about the FIG Foundation. Several of the young surveyors that you see around here have been funded by Foundation to be able to attend here today. And the young surveyors are the future of the surveying profession. So in several years, those should be the ones having the keynotes up here. So please help us bring future new wonderful keynote speakers. Thank you so much for now, and now it's time for coffee. And have a wonderful day.